Hi, I'm Kristen Hodgden, an IVF mom, proud women's health advocate, and co-founder of Rescripted. Welcome to From First Period to Last Period, a science-backed health and wellness podcast dedicated to shining a light on all of the women's health topics that have long been considered taboo. From UTIs to endometriosis, we're amplifying women's needs and voices because we know there's so much more to the female experience than what happens at the doctor's office. With From First Period to Last Period, we're doing the legwork on your whole body so you can be the expert in you. Now let's dive in. Painful sex, yeast infections, STIs, contraception, low sex drive. These are just some of the many sexual health topics that have long been considered taboo. This needs to change. Whether you're navigating intimacy issues while trying to conceive or looking for the truth about hormonal birth control, in this 4-episode mini-season of From First Period to Last Period, we're rescripting the conversation around sexual health. Because vaginal infections are one of the most common problems affecting women, and no, you don't need to use feminine hygiene products to be clean down there. Brought to you by Rescripted and Pinnacle Fertility. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to From First Period to Last Period. I'm your host, Kristen, and I'm so excited to be here today with Dr. Priya Masalal. Hi, Dr. Masalal.
Hello, Kristen.
How are you?
I'm doing well today. It's sunny in Ohio, so what can we ask for the spring?
It's beautiful in New York today, too. I'm definitely going to be going for a walk after this. But I'm so excited to talk about sexual health with you today. We were just talking offline about how when people are trying to conceive, you assume that they're having sex all the time, and that's not always the case. So we're going to be talking a little bit about low sex drive, intimacy issues when trying to conceive, underlying health issues that might be to blame, et cetera, et cetera. For those of you who don't know, Dr. Priya Masalal, she is a double board certified reproductive endocrinologist and infertility specialist at RGI Fertility in Ohio, a part of the Pinnacle Fertility Network. Okay, awesome. Let's dive in. I think, can you actually expand upon what I just said a little bit, like how sexual health issues or sexual intimacy issues are more common than we might think?
Yeah, I think for everybody, baseline, I think everybody assumes that people are having sex all the time, but life gets in the way, stress gets in the way. And particularly for people that have been trying to get pregnant and have not had success, sex can become a chore. And so I think that is one of the main issues that makes going forward hard or arduous mentally, physically, all those things. And so many people, people coming to me and you assume that at baseline they're having sex. And when you talk to them, they're like, no, we're not, because my husband has this issue and we can have sex for fun. But when it comes to making a baby, he can't get an erection. Or it hurts so much because I'm having sex day after day during my fertile window and it's just too much. I can go on. And so I think those things in themselves, we have to find workarounds, solutions, and get to the bottom of perhaps saying it's okay not to have sex every day. And when do you need to have sex? And why is this happening to him? And perhaps we can help him. So there's so many things that we can dive deep into to explore and help people.
Yes. And just to reiterate, if this is happening to you and your partner, you're not alone. Actually, the inspiration for this episode is that one of our top performing articles of all time is "Help, my husband can't perform during ovulation." So it's incredibly common for them to get stage fright. And we're going to dive into exactly why timed intercourse is so important during ovulation and how much you should actually be having sex during your fertile window. So let's talk a little bit about that. Like, how much should you actually be having sex and how many fertile days are there really?
And so we usually like to say if someone knows that if they're not doing things like ovulation predictor kits to exactly pinpoint their fertile window, then if someone has a 28-day cycle, you presume ovulation's happening around day 14. So we're just saying like middle of the cycle, somewhere around day 12, 13, 14 would be the ultimate times to have sex. And we only say like once a day, right? Okay. One, because you don't want to like dry up the well, so to speak. And two, you want it 3 consecutive days. The myth of every other day, you actually may miss your fertile window. People that are doing ovulation predictor kits, they have their surge or like their smiley face or whatever. And if they have it today, we usually say sex today, tomorrow, and the next day. And so it's really 3 days. And again, that can be hard for some people, 3 days in a row. Usually, I would say the day of or the day after are the most important times.
The day of this
Urge,
and the
exactly.
day after. Okay.
The day after. And if we're doing inseminations with that or artificial inseminations in the office, we typically do our artificial insemination 36 hours after a trigger, if they have a triggered surge, or 24 hours after a normal LH surge. That's the timing. Otherwise, I say in the month, really, sex is fun for fun. If you're having sex a week before ovulation or a week after, it's really the purpose is like for not procreation, right? It's just
Yeah.
for fun. And hopefully you're having some fun too with the sex for procreation.
Yeah. No, for sure. I think there can be a lot of emotions though tied to intimacy when you're struggling to conceive because like you associate sex with other people can get pregnant. And I always say we're taught in sex ed, if you have sex, you will get pregnant.
Exactly. The whole mantra your whole life is, oh my gosh, if sperm touches me, I'm going to get pregnant. And so, again, changing your mind to all those things we were taught, they aren't exactly true. And then realizing how difficult it really is to become pregnant, even
Mhm.
actually for a 25-year-old, every month, it's about a 25% chance per month. So, just educating people. And
Mhm.
then beyond that, it's looking at how it changes your life. So, for instance, if it's like an ovulation problem, and let's say it's a male factor problem, there's feelings of guilt. Oh, it's my fault. And then that can compound the inability to perform, if you will. And, but again, there's so many workarounds, there's so many ways to look at it and ways to have fun with the situation. I think the first thing is to like, one, no, we talked about this, Kristen, a little bit. No, you're not alone because everybody's lying if they say that this is super easy. Even the sex part when you're trying to get pregnant, because it is a different way to think about sex. And so I think that people have to just be real and honest about it. And then platforms like this, talking about it
Yeah.
is real important. And so that's what we're doing.
Absolutely. So, what are some of the reasons couples struggle with low sex drive or intimacy issues when trying to conceive?
Okay, so let's take the female. One, I think the female, sometimes it can be like a physical thing. There's a condition called vaginismus where you have involuntary spasm of the vagina and things like that. Now, certainly it's a medical condition, but sex becomes hard. Sometimes just having intimacy and foreplay can help with that situation. A lot of these people do things like physical therapy. So maybe they're able to have sex, but to do it continually and do it at the right time is difficult for them. So, specifically, if you have vaginismus, we're recommending things like pelvic floor physical therapy. I literally tell my patients go to the sex store, go buy things like feathers and try to like zhuzh up your sex life because having fun with it, it doesn't have to be done in 5 minutes, right? Like sex. Like if you can, this might be an opportunity to do different things sexually, and you might have a story to tell, or like it might open your
Mhm.
eyes to other things in this hard time of trying to get pregnant. Oftentimes, women, they take a little bit more to get to that climax and than men typically. And sometimes vaginal lubrication or having sex too quickly, your body's, oh my gosh, it hurt last time because it happened too fast. I don't know if I want to do it as much at this time. But you have the other side of your shoulder saying, oh, we need to do this. We need to do this because we need to get pregnant now. So I think it can be stressful because you want to feel, sex should feel good. It should be a good thing. But sometimes because you make it like a business transaction, it's not as good. And I think dealing with that and finding your way to maybe talking to your partner, I think is essential. Like being open and saying, hey, this is how I'm feeling. Maybe we should take a minute. Maybe we should try that thing we bought at the sex store or watch something that stimulates us or
Mhm.
and what works for one person and one couple may not work for the second couple, but be
Yeah.
open with a conversation and trying things, I think is super important. For a guy, sometimes guys may have things like low testosterone, may affect their libido. It may affect their ability to have ejaculation and erection. As we age, you know what? Guys don't get, let's say, as hard as they may once, and that it might be hard for them. So things like Viagra may be helpful in these situations where it's hard for people to perform every day after day.
Does
For the guy
that affect fertility at all, Viagra?
no, it does not, but
Okay.
testosterone does. So guys that have typically taken testosterone because they had low testosterone and may need that for their libido, The irony is that does affect the sperm. So they come off of it and they may have difficulty with sex now, or ejaculation or erection. And so there's different medicines that we can use that can increase testosterone. So your male reproductive urologist or sometimes your reproductive endocrinologist can help suggest and prescribe these medicines. So things like HCG or things like FSH can help, or LH can help. So someone can get off testosterone, but use these different drugs to increase testosterone more naturally in the body to help with like ejaculation erection.
Okay. And is that a part of an initial male fertility evaluation?
The semen analysis always is. And
Mhm.
if someone would say, hey, I've been on testosterone, or hey, I have trouble with ejaculation or erection, usually we look at their semen analysis first. And then based on their semen analysis, I usually do some more hormonal blood work. Or again, if they said, hey, I'm getting off testosterone, we see if we can rebound it or give them other hormones to increase production and then therefore increase libido faster. And
Mhm.
if someone said, hey, I have trouble baseline with ejaculation erection and my testosterone's fine, then we say, okay, perhaps try something like Viagra and see if
Mhm.
that will help.
Interesting. I hadn't heard that before. I don't know why I assumed maybe it would impact fertility, but it's so good to know that it doesn't. And so, are there any like male fertility supplements that you typically recommend, or is it more just medication or?
I think as far as like libido is concerned, if there's a low semen analysis, we use things like CoQ10 or Fertile Aid. I think what are they a magic pill that totally changes things? Not, but we're into adjuncts. Into doing everything that we can to improve the environment.
Mhm.
And for males, I would say mostly it's just that CoQ10.
And then going back to vaginismus for a second, like how do you bypass that? I know you talked about taking your time with intimacy and stuff like that.
So if you can't take your I have had patients in the past that literally cannot they have beautiful, healthy marriages, but for them, sex isn't part of that. And usually I have them come in. I usually have one practitioner, let's say it's myself, and I work with them enough to be able to do insemination. So I can think of two or three in particular of recent patients that just can't have intercourse. But if I tell them if I can get speculum and I can do an IUI, they so want to be parents and they want to do it as natural as possible. I'm able to collect sperm with caution and time, be able to do an artificial insemination. And then they've had success and they've come back over years. And then, of course, we address, hey, their vaginismus and how can we help you? And like I mentioned before, pelvic floor physical therapy and working with both partners to help. And but there's ways around it because if people want a baby, like they want it now, like they don't necessarily want to wait. And it's because they've already been waiting. And there's workarounds.
Yeah. Okay, love that. And sometimes the patients don't necessarily always have fertility issues. It's just like this. Okay, that makes.
And lots of my patients, they may say, I'm asking, hey, to the male partner, if there's a male partner, have you ever had problems? If when your wife's, let's perhaps having an egg retrieval and she's having surgery that day, it's a lot of stress. Do you think you're going to have problems performing? And if they say, well, maybe, I don't know, we always have an option to freeze sperm prior in a lower stress environment. And they have many days or a month to try to keep that specimen. So for people that have had problems with that, I always offer that prior to treatment just so they feel better. So, because it can cause issues. Let's say it's your fertile window and for some reason we can't get sperm that day. We don't want to make more trouble in a marriage. We want to say, like, hey, we can save some. And if we need it, great. If we don't need it, great. And just have backups.
Yeah, absolutely. We also did a post one time on spontaneous desire versus responsive desire, meaning I think some people think that they have to be like ready to go at all times, but really it's like a two-way street. And sometimes it's doing like more foreplay, like you said, or like responding to your partner, or it's a process and it's not always, wait, I'm ovulating. Like we should be ready to go doing this.
Exactly. And I think people have to take a minute, take a step back and then think on it. And there's certain things too. I don't know if you asked me this, but in a woman's body, when we talk about ovulation, certain things like foreplay physiologically is also essential because natural mucus comes, which helps the sperm in transport and things like that.
Right. I was just going to ask that actually about, in theory, women are supposed to, I guess, when your body's ovulating, you're supposed to be a little bit more.
Mhm. And that's lots of people with natural family planning, the stretchiness or the like clearness of their cervical mucus.
Yep.
And that I always joke, I feel like the cervical mucus is like a highway for the sperm to get up into the cervix and go. And so if you have things like lack of foreplay or you're just using a bunch of lubricant, it can actually be detrimental to the sperm as opposed to, like you said, meet your partner where they are, increase that foreplay, increase the cervical mucus, and try to make it a pleasurable experience. And again, we've all had, I mean, a lot of us have had infertility issues, and I know that it can be very hard, but you just have to take things slow in a way. And we tell you, this doctors are telling you on one hand, take it slow, but on the other hand, hey, there's this fertile window and it's X amount long, and to try to do it. But there is more time than people perceive. And again, just communicating with people and both people being, like you said, responsive to the other person,
Mhm.
meeting them where they're at. And it's okay. The world is not going to end if you don't have sex today. You just
Yeah.
have to, and maybe it'll happen tomorrow. Maybe it'll happen a couple hours from now.
Clearing up some of the misinformation or like myths is so important because I actually told a friend recently, she just started trying to conceive. I told her that sperm can live in the female reproductive tract for up to 5 days, and her mind was literally blown.
Yeah, that is true. Even though we say 3 days, it's not impossible on the fourth or fifth day, and sperm hangs out there. Yeah, it does.
Because like her husband travels a lot and she was like worried about all the logistics. And yeah, I was like, okay, you'll be okay.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, something I thought was interesting on my own journey was that when I actually got to IUI and IVF, it almost took some of the pressure off.
Yeah, isn't it funny? A lot of people say that because you're manning the ship. And sometimes once you get to IUI and IVF, I always tell people again, have sex for fun. I'll tell you when I need the sperm or when need to have sex. Go back to the old way. Let me help you on this side. And so
Right.
it's dating in a way that people aren't like peeing on sticks anymore and trying to figure this out and taking temperatures and monitoring in their
Yeah.
app. Like that gets really old and stressful. But when we're doing IUI and IVF, I'm just going to tell you, okay, this is when I need it. And ironically, it's sometimes easier for people.
Yeah, I had a bunch of failed embryo transfers, and then I decided to take a year off because it was getting really stressful, and I started tracking naturally, but I have PCOS, which was
Hard to track, actually.
almost impossible.
Yeah.
And I was putting so much pressure on myself to go to acupuncture and do all these holistic things. But then it was like I couldn't time it for the life of me still. And it put so much pressure on me. Like I was beating myself up and then trying to like then tying sex to that again. It just did not feel good. And that's when I hit my breaking point and said, okay, I'm just gonna do one last IVF cycle.
Yeah.
And the weight off my shoulders at that point was enormous. Like I just felt, okay, I'm handing it over. I'm handing it all over.
Exactly. There's so many things that people go through. I wanted to go back to a question you asked me about why sometimes it can be painful and like underlying things you talked about your PCOS. But even when we're giving sometimes medicines to people, they may feel bloated because they're getting more than one egg at a time. They may feel like they may have other things. We talked about vaginismus, but things like endometriosis, where they may have pelvic factor and things are stuck in certain positions for sex can be painful. So exploring different positions, exploring going perhaps to do an IUI instead of having sex. I think all are things that we want to talk about. And having sex gingerly, right? Sometimes is also something that we talk about a lot around here.
What's your recommendation for lube? What do people need to know about if they want to use that?
Well, when I ask my andrologist, they surprisingly tell me most lube is toxic. So natural lube is the best. And because for a long time, a lot of my patients are like, oh, we're buying this one brand of lube and it's pro sperm. And I was like, according to my andrologist, they say the best lube is none. And second would be honestly saliva. And then they said the third would be this one brand of lubrication, but it doesn't enhance your fertility. There's no lubrication that enhances your fertility. So I think
Yeah,
that's
of
also
course. Yeah. Yeah, it's so important to just reiterate the importance of doing your research when it comes to TTC products, lube, supplements,
Mhm.
etc.
Yeah,
Like always run it by your doctor because you never know what you're getting
exactly.
on or anything like that.
Another thing that I always tell people that I feel like is a myth, people always, you talked about your break that you took, right? I think sometimes breaks can be essential because we get in this rat race of, oh, you have to do this month after month. So I tell people it's okay to take breaks and it's also okay to plan life. I think a lot of us are like, oh, I'm not going to go on that vacation or I'm not going to do this because I'm going through infertility treatment. And I don't, I'm like anti that. I think you should plan your life. You should do these things because all of that leads to more stress, which can lead to decreased libido, that can lead to less success. And so
Yeah.
I think it's really important that you take time for yourself, that you make things that like plan that vacation, plan that, go to that wedding,
Love
do all
that.
those things. Otherwise, it gets hard.
Yeah,
And
I've done it both ways. Like the first time around, I did not take a break. I like refused because I was just so dead set on becoming a mom. This time, I had two other kids to think about. It was like way just was more stressful as far as just like logistics. And I wanted to be the best version of myself for them. And it depends on what you're currently going through. But I think I wish that I had taken a break back then because I was not in the best place emotionally at all. And sometimes you just need a little regroup, even if it's just 1 month off of trying
exactly.
really.
Exactly. A lot of people ask me about, do you need an orgasm to get pregnant? I would say, like, the two things that I would say about orgasms are that no, it's not essential to, I suppose in a man it's essential because it's the same as ejaculation, but in a woman, I wouldn't say that it helps you. In theory, there could be some like muscle spasm that may help with taking the sperm up into the uterus. And so, if anything, that perhaps that can be beneficial, but I think it's not necessary. And we
Mhm.
always want your sexual experience to be pleasurable. And I think that sometimes what gets caught up in here is sexual pleasure versus the act of sex. And so I really think always, like you said, going back and trying to think of it every these experiences is pleasure and you're trying to connect with your partner. That's why you're trying to have a child because you want to have a baby with your, and I really think that's another myth that because people beat themselves up. Oh my God, that sex didn't go well. And so I'm
Mhm.
probably not going to get pregnant this cycle. But
That's a great one. The other one that we just wrote about on our site was, do you have to pee after sex to get pregnant to flush everything, or can
yeah,
you pee after
can
sex?
you pee after
When you will
sex?
you flush the sperm out?
Yeah. And no, you won't flush sperm out. You don't have to stand upside down. You don't have to do a headstand, all that stuff. But you can definitely pee, that kind of stuff. And you can even take a shower afterwards if you want, and you could still get pregnant.
That's awesome. So I always like to ask towards the end of the episode, what would you rescript about the way individuals and couples think about sex as it relates to getting pregnant?
I guess I would rescript that you should focus on sex still being fun. You should focus that you're there as a partner. And I would say that I guess the other part to this is sex is not necessary to have a baby. So if you want to have a baby and you can't have sex or sex in the traditional way that we are speaking about, you can still have a baby. You can still be a mom. You can still be a parent. And
That's so
so
freeing to just say out loud.
yeah, it's true. And so be honest with your doctor. Tell them what you want. Tell them what difficulties you're having because it's very likely that they have some solutions for you. And if you don't feel like you can ask that doctor, ask a different doctor because there are always ways for us to help because this is what we do for a living.
Yeah, for sure. At what point would you suggest going from your OB or PCP to the fertility specialist, like when dealing with these kind of issues?
And I think if you have an issue like vaginismus and you aren't having sex, you probably should go to your fertility doctor right away.
Mhm.
Traditionally, the definition of infertility is 12 months of unprotected intercourse, or if, and without success, if you're under 35 or 6 months above 35. But if you're having pain with your period, if sex or intimacy is a problem, if you're having problems with ejaculation or erection, if you have been prescribed things like testosterone, these in my head or go straight to the fertility doctor kind of things and check yourself out, see where you are.
Yeah. Do any fertility clinics still like absolutely require that you've been trying for a year?
I think any, yes, but I think most, no.
Okay. I feel like that needs to be like put out there into the universe because I think some people still think that they have to
Yeah,
be trying for a
absolutely.
year.
And then there's people that have concerns. You may be a single lady and have concerns because you have There's another condition called vulvodynia that's just even as soon as you touch any part of the vulva, it's like excruciating pain. And they may even be wanting to get married or talking about how to have sex and maybe how does it affect my fertility in the future. There are people that talk about, I'm sure you've done podcasts and stuff about just where am I in my fertility? I know I want to have a kid someday, but where am I? And so many of those patients that have come just being educated about the process and in general and all these myths. We were joking that you were told your whole life that you can get pregnant so easily, right? All our health classes. And even when I was in college and after, you're like, oh my gosh, you just have to be so careful because we're going to get pregnant if someone looks at us the wrong way. And in reality, it's not like that. And so just teaching people.
Absolutely. That's what we're here for. Thank you so much, Dr. Massalal. This was so amazing and informative. And I did not realize how much fertility specialists deal with sexual health issues. So thank you for
Well, it was
normaling
a
it.
pleasure being on. I love it. And hopefully people get the help and know that they're not alone.
Absolutely. Thank you again.
If this podcast means something to you, be sure to hit follow or subscribe. This helps you because you'll never miss an episode, and it helps us because you'll never miss an episode. For science-backed women's health content that meets you exactly where you are, head to rescripted.com or follow us on social at Hello Rescripted.